error and the ego. Welcome, this is David. Thank you once again for being here. And let's get into this topic, error and the ego. I think this should be quite interesting. Now, the course says, the abilities you now possess are only shadows of your real strength. In other words, even if you think you're the greatest guy on earth right now, you're only experiencing a tiny speck of your real strength. You know the way scientists say that we humans use only 10% of our brain? Okay? And, we keep thinking, what would happen if we could use 90% of it? Well, forget the brain. That is still a shadow of the real strength. Okay? So, I just gave you that example of the brain just to start and give you an illustration that even here at this level, at the biological level, in fact, not just the brain, your physical capabilities, if you want to call them that, we all know that we're using a tiny fraction of what we're capable of. All of us. Now, take that to the realm, take that outside the realm of illusions. We're already in the illusion. We're using a tiny fraction of our capability. Take it to reality, and you can start to grasp what the course means in that one simple sentence, that the abilities you now possess are only shadows of your real strength. I think that's amazing. It's an amazing statement to make, especially when you put it in context with even what we already know about our biology and our brains. It just blows your mind away, doesn't it? Now, all of your present functions are divided and open to question and doubt. This is because you are not certain how you will use them and are therefore incapable of knowledge. You are also incapable of knowledge because you can still perceive lovelessly. Whoa, certainty and fear. And love. Certainty and love seem to be certain prerequisites that they're talking about here. So here they're saying because we don't have certainty, we lack certainty, and we lack loving perception. In other words, we perceive through fear. In fact, perception is a function of fear. So it's saying that we will never really know our real strength as long as we're in a place of uncertainty and fear. Perception did not exist until the separation introduced degrees, aspects, and intervals. Spirit has no levels, and all conflict arises from the concept of levels. Only the levels of the Trinity are capable of unity. The levels created by the separation cannot but conflict. This is because they are meaningless to each other. So we already knew that perception did not exist until the separation. But this is a further clarification that, degrees, let's say for example, this is harder than the other. That thing is, for example, it's easier to do this than that, or this miracle is more difficult than that one, So, and also time, today, tomorrow, yesterday, past, future, now, intervals, So degrees, aspects, intervals. These are, in other words, space and time, are a function of separation, and so is perception. But spirit has no levels, and all conflict arises from the concept of levels. It is because of these levels, degrees, aspects, and intervals that there is such a thing as conflict. It's just a concept as well. Now, it says that there are the only levels that are capable of unity are the levels of the Trinity, which you already know what the Trinity is. Okay. And the best part of this paragraph is that the reason why the levels of separation must create conflict is because they are meaningless to each other. That is quite interesting. Meaningless to each other. Look at that paragraph again. Degrees, aspects, intervals. In other words, time. So this is more difficult than the other. Now put together that sentence. This, let's say doing this thing is more difficult than doing that thing. And then put together a different kind of level. This time intervals, time, yesterday, today, tomorrow. Now try and put together those two in your mind. The idea of time and the idea of difficulty. And then bring back what we know about reality, what we know about, let's say, like how life operates, quantum physics, everything. You realize that this statement is so true that the different kinds of levels are completely meaningless to each other. The idea of difficulty put together with the idea of time is meaningless to each other. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? At the level of that reality, even physical reality, let's go to the quantum level, which I do hope you went through that chapter on quantum physics in the book A Happy Pocket Full of Money, which you would have received with this course at the very beginning of this course. I gave it to you. From that quantum physics, you'll understand that the building blocks of life itself don't understand levels of difficulty. Energy has no levels of difficulty. But we then go ahead and come up with the idea or the concepts of levels. Yet these levels, since are fake, are meaningless to each other, and that's why they must conflict. I hope that's kind of making sense. Consciousness, which is the level of perception, by the way. Whenever you talk about consciousness, you're talking about perception, was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation. I am self-conscious. Self-conscious. Don't you think that's a bit contradictory in a place where everything is one? If we're all one, why am I thinking I am me and there's a separate you? Self-conscious. They're saying this whole idea of perceiving me as a separate me from you, what we now call consciousness, was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. Isn't that amazing? Because quite often we place consciousness so high up there, but they're actually trying to tell you that it's just in the domain of the ego. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. A wrong-minded attempt. It's about a false identity. Yet, you can know yourself only as you are. Notice we use the word know. Because that is all you can be sure of. Everything else is open to question. You can perceive yourself wrongly if you wish, as you wish to be, but you can only know yourself as you are. And it's the only thing you can be sure of. The ego is the questioning aspect of the post-separation self, which was made rather than created. Remember, creation is eternal. Image making, made, is all about illusions. It is capable of asking questions. Made, by the way, it's about projection, illusions. Anyways, it is capable of asking questions, but not of perceiving meaningful answers. Because these would involve knowledge and cannot be perceived. Okay. That makes sense, because meaningful answers is about knowledge, and knowledge is not about being perceived, it's about being known. The mind is therefore confused because only one-mindedness can be without confusion. That's such a simple statement. Only one-mindedness can be without confusion. So if you're separate-mindedness, you must be confused. Wow. This is really spelling out the problems that the mind really has to deal with, the errors the mind has to deal with, whenever it adopts the ego as its identity. Okay, a separated or divided mind must be confused. It is necessarily uncertain about what it is. Necessarily. It cannot help it. As long as it's a divided mind, it must be confused by necessity. It has to be in conflict because it is out of accord with itself. Yes, it's telling itself that it is something than what it really is. In other words, it's adopting a false identity and rejecting its reality. Therefore, it is not in accord with itself. This makes its aspects, remember, separation is all about aspects, levels and all that. This makes its aspects strangers to each other. And this is the essence of the fear-prone condition in which attack is always possible. You have every reason to feel afraid as you perceive yourself. This is why you cannot escape from fear until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself. Wow. Until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself. Remember we talked about in the previous slide that the illusions are made and not created. They're just projections. Yet we hold on to them as if they're so real and as if they are the actual reality and everything else is fake. How many times do we dismiss what we cannot see and say, I can't see it, I can't touch it, it's just make-believe. So we have totally bought into the fake. Now you could say, how do I know if this is the fake? Maybe. But how do you know it's not the fake? How do you know you're living in reality and not in an illusion? Think about that. You might doubt what this course is telling you, but you have no way of proving that you're not living in an illusion either. Just because you cut your body and blood comes out doesn't mean that is real. So in a sense, we can all doubt what the course says, and we just have to keep moving forward. And every day as we move forward, we get deeper and deeper and we understand more, and then we start to see and know more. And if anything is not real, it falls apart, and if anything is real, it stays. So some of these statements are very heavy until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself. It's actually very simple, but your ego tries to fight it and complicate it, but it's actually very simple. You can never make your misperceptions true, and your creation is beyond your own error. That is a saving grace. Your misperceptions can last for hundreds or millions of years if you maintain them, but they will never be true. One day they'll collapse. And your creation is beyond your own error, so it's always safe, it's always there, waiting for you. That is why you must eventually choose to heal the separation. Right-mindedness is not to be confused with the knowing mind, because it is applicable only to right perception. You can be right-minded or wrong-minded, and even this is subject to degrees, clearly demonstrating that knowledge is not involved. The term right-mindedness is properly used as a correction for wrong-mindedness and applies to the state of mind that induces accurate perception. It is miracle-minded because it heals misperceptions, and this is indeed a miracle in view of how you perceive yourself. So right-mindedness is just on the way to the ultimate goal, which is the knowing mind. It's you could say, stepping stone. Perception always involves some misuse of mind because it brings the mind into areas of uncertainty. The mind is very active. When it chooses to be separated, it chooses to perceive. Until then, it wills only to know. So before it chooses to be separated, it wills only to know. The minute it stops willing to know, afterwards it can only choose ambiguously, and the only way out of ambiguity is clear perception. The mind returns to its proper function only when it wills to know. So you have to will to know. Listen, you have to will to know. This places it in the service of spirit where perception is changed. That's all you gotta do. You simply have to be willing. Let go and be willing. And then it will be guided back home. The mind chooses to divide itself when it chooses to make its own levels. Make. See, they didn't even use the word create. They said make, because it's make belief. Make belief. Make its own levels. But it could not entirely separate itself from spirit. Did you see just what happened there? I just want to look at that first sentence. It's loaded with information. The mind chooses. It's a choice. It chooses. It's not forced to divide itself when it chooses to make, not create, make. It's a projection. Its own levels. This is very important. Levels. That's all about separation. But it could not entirely separate itself from spirit, because it is from spirit that it derives its whole power to make or create. So the mind itself is, how do you say, spirit is complete, never going to be confused. Creative tool of spirit, if I can call it that, excuse that word, creative tool of spirit. I'm just using it. I don't even know if it's the right way to put it, but you know, English. What can you do? The creative tool of spirit is the mind. Spirit is never corrupted. It's forever innocent or in its original state. But its creative tool, mind, can choose to make or create, can choose to be separated, yet it can never totally forever separate. It's not a possible thing, because it does not give itself its own life. It is from spirit that it derives what you might want to call the life of the mind, for the lack of a better word. Like I said, English, what can you do? Anyways, even in miscreation, the mind is affirming its source, or it would merely cease to be. You see? The mind is not independent of spirit. Yet it cannot cease to be. This is impossible because the mind belongs to spirit, which the Creator created and which is therefore eternal. The ability to perceive made the body possible because you must perceive something and with something. So you see, perception came. Have you noticed how we've gone down the trends, like how the whole separation happened, and you know, we talked about levels, and we've been moving down this path, and now we've gotten to the level whereby we're looking at why did physicality arise, and specifically your body in physicality. So the ability to perceive made the body possible. Yeah, because remember we talked about separation. Perception being a function of separation, but perception needs something to perceive something else. Okay? That's why bodies or physicality sort of popped up. That is why perception involves an exchange or translation, which knowledge does not need. Okay? Yeah, think about it. Even now, you listen to my voice. It's coming out of the speakers of your, I don't know, computer or whatever, and it's getting into your ear, hitting your eardrums. Actually, it's not even, my voice is traveling as fluctuations of air waves with different pressure. That pressure is banging into your eardrums in different ways. The eardrum is banging on, the eardrum hammer is banging on whatever it's called inside your ear. And then that's producing an electric current that's flowing down your nerve, yeah, down your ear into your brain, and then it's going through a whole bunch of interpretation and translation. You see, that is why perception involves an exchange of translation, which knowledge does not need. Knowledge would not need that kind of exchange and then translation. So can you see how the body is actually or biology, you already know this. What I just told you about the ear or even your eyes, you already know that sight works in, even vision, light, retina hits the eyeballs, goes into the retina, converted to an electric current, down the optical nerve into the brain, interpreted. you know already. Same thing with your touch. So you can see that the biology is speaking exactly what the cause is saying as well. Anyways, let's read on. The interpretative function of perception, a distorted form of creation, then permits you to interpret the body as yourself in an attempt to escape from the conflict you have induced. Do you see that sentence? Before the body was made possible, which is the first sentence in this paragraph, the ability to perceive made the body possible, okay? And remember, perception involves levels, aspects, and intervals. So already those are conflicting with each other because they are meaningless. We saw that in a few slides ago, okay? Now, to escape from this conflict, you interpret your body as yourself, and the conflicting side of yourself, you say, it's not me. So you escape from the conflict you have induced. Do you see how that went? You're one already, but within that whole perception thing, you separated, and then within that separation and levels, conflict naturally arose. And so you shut down aspects that are really you, and you said it's not me, and then you picked others and said this is me. You see? Yet we know that we are taught that we are all one, and do you understand what I'm trying to say here? What this last sentence is suggesting is that we escape from the conflict we have induced using separation. We created the conflict through the introduction of levels, and now we're using the body to pretend and escape, in quotes, from the conflict we have induced. Spirit, which knows, could not be reconciled with this loss of power because it is incapable of darkness. So spirit was never gonna buy into this madness, basically. This makes spirit almost inaccessible to the mind and entirely inaccessible to the body. Thereafter, spirit is perceived as a threat because light abolishes darkness merely by showing you it is not there. Wow! Check that out. So spirit can never recognize the madness, and that means it can never recognize the body. And because the mind is still, it can never completely leave spirit, yet because it has completely bought into the whole separation idea, it makes spirit almost inaccessible to the mind and entirely inaccessible to the body, you see. Therefore, spirit is perceived as a threat, of course. Okay, truth will always overcome error in this way. This cannot be an active process of correction because, as I have already emphasized, knowledge does not do anything. It can be perceived as an attacker, but it cannot attack. What you perceive as its attack is your own vague recognition that knowledge can always be remembered, never having been destroyed. So it's not knowledge itself that's attacking you. What you're perceiving as an attack from knowledge is just your vague recollection and recognition that the minute you open up to knowledge, boom, it will wipe out all error. Okay? I like the little definitions that the course really makes a good effort to bring to us, Instead of just dictating, it's telling us reasons why certain things are the way they are. And even look at this sentence, this cannot be an active process of correction. Yeah? Because knowledge does not do anything. So it's not that knowledge is coming to correct. It's simply, once the door is open, it streams in its lights and the darkness automatically goes. So but it's not knowledge that it's kicking it out. I don't know whether that makes any sense, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Okay. Only your misperceptions stand in your way. Without them, your choice is certain. As in, you're certainly going to choose knowledge. Sane perception induces sane choosing. The chosen ones are merely those who choose right sooner. Because everyone will choose right eventually. Right minds can do this now, and they will find rest unto their souls. God knows you only in peace, and this is your reality. Wow, that was fun, wasn't it? I really liked that chapter. Topic. It was really amazing, and I hope you found it quite amazing as well, right? So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next topic. Thank you.